Welcome everyone and hello. My name is Joe, the Longevity Pro, and let's get straight to the show. All right, welcome everyone, welcome. In today's show, we're going to be looking at a brand new study that was just published, looking at the effect of a fasting mimicking diet on biological age reversal, and a variety of different markers. So very interesting study that I want to discuss with you guys. Then we're going to go over a few other newer studies on either a fasting mimicking diet or on intermittent fasting in general. So this is a topic that is talked about a lot in the nutrition and longevity communities. However, I think it's often misrepresented, okay? And I'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. So let me pull up the study here that was published in the Nature Communications Journal just a couple of days ago. Well, I'm pulling up the article from Science Daily, actually, which details the study. So, as you can see, headline, fasting-like diet lowers risk factors for disease, reduces biological age in humans. So, what this study was looking at was the effect of a fasting mimicking diet, it's called. And what a fasting mimicking diet is, it's a diet that's, of course, supposed to mimic the effects of fasting, right? But a diet that you're actually also able to still have some calories, to still get all of the nutrition you need. So oftentimes when people follow an intermittent fasting approach and they're not fully educated on how to do it the correct way, they can run into some issues. And that's why I don't just outright always recommend an intermittent fasting style diet to people, because you need to be either tracking your nutrition to make sure you're getting all of the micronutrients you need and the macronutrients. You need to make sure you're eating enough calories to sustain necessary function within the body, and that you have the micronutrients to actually fuel the cellular activity. So a fasting mimicking diet is a really interesting approach, not necessarily for everyone, very interesting approach, but let's look at the effects that this fasting mimicking diet had in this study. So, summary. Cycles of a diet that mimics fasting can reduce signs of immune system aging, as well as insulin resistance and liver fat in humans. Okay, so for all the human study people out there, human study, all right? Resulting in lower biological age. Let's read a little bit more here about the study. The study, which appears in Nature Communications on February 20th, adds to the body of evidence supporting the beneficial effects of the fasting mimicking diet. The fasting mimicking diet is a 5-day diet high in unsaturated fats and low in overall calories, protein, and carbohydrates, and is designed to mimic the effect of a water-only fast while still providing the necessary nutrients and making it much easier for people to complete the fast. So still calorie restriction, still severe calorie restriction, but not the style of calorie restriction like full fasting, which also limits your micronutrient intake. So again, interesting approach here. Let's continue. The diet was developed by laboratory of USC Leonard Davis School professor Valter Longo. Now, I'll make this clear. Valter Longo was a part of this study, so it's never shocking to see that somebody who has a vested interest in something is part of a study that proves its benefits, okay? That's normal. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that, okay? We have to take each study and the results of each study on their own, taking into account all the factors involved, and one of those factors is who's involved in this study. So let's just make that a mental note of that. So here's a quote. This is the first study to show that a food-based intervention that does not require chronic dietary or other lifestyle changes can make people biologically younger based on both changes in risk factors, in aging and disease, and on a validated method developed by the Levine Group to assess biological age. So this is what Longo had to say here. Previous research led by Longo has indicated that brief periodic fasting mimicking diet cycles are associated with a range of benefits, including promoting stem cell regeneration, lessening chemotherapy side effects. I have seen the research on that and on intermittent fasting and the lessening of the side effects of chemotherapy. Very interesting effects there. And one thing I also want to say is I find it interesting, and what I'm about to say isn't scientifically validated, okay? But I find it interesting that when individuals undergo chemotherapy, they naturally lose their appetite. And one of the things we always tell them is, you got to eat. You got to eat. You got to keep your weight up. You got to keep strong. You got to keep your muscle strength. And all of that is true. But it's interesting that the body has this natural response to want to fast. Okay. Now to continue here about the fast mimicking diet. Also benefits seen in reducing the signs of dementia in mice. So a lot of the effects we see with intermittent fasting are also seen with a fasting mimicking diet. So that makes you wonder which approach should actually be favored. Now let's continue about the study here. The study analyzed the diet's effects in 2 clinical populations, each with men and women between the ages of 18 and 70. Patients who were randomized to the fasting mimicking diet underwent 3 to 4 monthly cycles, adhering to the fasting mimicking diet for 5 days, and then ate a normal diet for 25 days. So just 5 days out of each month here, they were following this fasting mimicking diet. Now for the diet, the fasting mimicking diet was comprised of plant-based soups, energy bars, energy drinks, chip snacks, and tea portioned out for 5 days, as well as a supplement providing high levels of minerals, vitamins, and essential fatty acids. Now, here's my question. You can never convince me that energy bars, energy drinks, and chip snacks are a part of the healthiest possible diet. Now, we can look at the fasting mimicking diet and we can say there's benefits, but we can also obviously say there's improvements, at least from this approach. Because again, you're not going to convince me that energy bars, energy drinks, and chip snacks are the best way to go. Will it work? Probably, as long as everything else is accounted for. But working does not mean that it's optimal. Let's continue. Patients in the control groups were instructed to eat either a normal or Mediterranean-style diet. An analysis of blood samples from trial participants showed that patients in the fasting mimicking diet group had lower diabetes risk factors, including less insulin resistance and lower hemoglobin A1C. Okay, now that is powerful, right? If we are reducing insulin resistance, which we know is directly related to decreased longevity, decreased lifespan, also with this hemoglobin A1C reading, right? So this prolonged blood sugar. If a fasting mimicking diet is improving these markers, that's great. Okay, very important. Let's continue. MRIs also revealed a decrease in abdominal fat as well as fat within the liver, improvements associated with a reduced risk of metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome, again, something that affects us and promotes this cardiometabolic aging, this accelerated cardiometabolic aging, where we start to run into issues with blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, triglycerides, obesity. And a fasting mimicking diet seems to have benefits in reducing many of these markers. Reducing fatty liver, that's big. In addition, the fasting mimicking diet cycles appear to increase the lymphoid to myeloid ratio, an indicator of a more youthful immune system. Again, as we age, we start to run into some immune issues. Our immune system gets weakened, and maybe intermittent fasting or a fasting mimicking diet can come in here and rescue some of this decline, some of this accelerated decline. Now, let's get to the actual aging part. Further statistical analysis of the results from both clinical studies showed that fasting mimicking diet participants had reduced their biological age, a measure of how well one's cells and tissues are functioning, as opposed to chronological age, by 2.5 years on average. So this biological age reading is a reading that a lot of people are interested in the longevity community. And as they stated here, it's kind of looking at cellular function. And this isn't a test that's necessarily super clinically validated that we know is related to how long we're going to live or anything like that. I like to use this with clients to kind of gamify our approach. When we're designing personalized supplement protocols and nutrition protocols, we can kind of gamify it by taking these biological age tests twice a year or something like that. It makes it fun to track, to, let's try to reverse our age. And it makes things more fun, makes you more committed, and makes you more just engulfed in this lifestyle where you're more likely to make positive choices. So that's why these biological age tests are interesting. And interesting to see that this new study showed biological age reversal by 2.5 years for those following a fasting mimicking diet. Now, let me pull up the next study here that I want to discuss. The study's titled, "The Potential of Fasting Mimicking Diet as a Preventative and Curative Strategy for Alzheimer's Disease." Now, this was a research review here, and I'm going to just cover this really quickly. We're really going just over one piece of this. We know that one of the main reasons that intermittent fasting is recommended is because its effect on autophagy and how it improves this cellular health, this cellular recycling of damaged cells, and just promoting overall cellular recovery and improved cellular function. And this is one of the main reasons that intermittent fasting got popular in the first place, okay? Also for the weight management benefits, but this effect of autophagy and brain health was a major reason intermittent fasting took off in the mainstream media. Now, this study looked at the effects of a fasting mimicking diet and whether or not it could have similar effects. And one interesting piece that this study found, and this was in animal models, was that fasting mimicking diets can reduce this beta amyloid plaque accumulation. And a lot of research points to beta amyloid plaques contributing or playing a part in Alzheimer's disease in a key way. Now, there's some talk about whether beta amyloid plaques are the cause of Alzheimer's or whether they're a symptom of the true cause of Alzheimer's, which is kind of this dysregulated blood sugar regulation within the brain. And interesting connection between how fasting affects blood sugar, and also now we're starting to see the effects of a fasting mimicking approach on the reduction of beta amyloid plaques, at least in animal models. So good to see more research being done on these intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diet style approaches, because the research was lacking previously. Now this next study I want to show is about some of the potential downsides of a fasting mimicking diet and intermittent fasting in general, where it's often looked at as the holy grail. Everybody should intermittently fast. Everybody should do a fasting mimicking diet just 5 days out of the month, right? A lot of these recommendations get thrown around, but we forget that each individual person is unique in what's going on in their body, and we have to personalize an approach to each and every individual based on their exact needs. And general approaches like intermittent fasting, like fasting mimicking diets, like keto, like paleo, like carnivore, general approaches like these can have benefits and can be a good starting place for people. But if we do these general template approaches long term, we can really run into some issues because we're not taking into account our own unique biology. And one of the effects that can happen with intermittent fasting and perhaps a fasting mimicking diet is that it stresses the body. So often it causes an increase in cortisol, this stress hormone, and we don't want prolonged elevated levels of cortisol because this sets off this cascade within the body that dysregulates blood sugar, dysregulates hormone function, can contribute to things like weight gain and abdominal fat. And oftentimes we're living this high-paced, super stressed out lifestyle and already have this issue with dysregulated cortisol, with high stress, high cortisol levels. So we don't want to add excess stress to these individuals who are already just in super hyperdrive, super high cortisol production. We don't necessarily want to be adding extra stress to them. We want to kind of reset, rebalance. We want to nourish on a cellular level these people before we can start throwing them into some of these more intense approaches. Now, this study here was a systematic review and a meta-analysis that looked at the effect of cortisol levels on fasting, but also on calorie restriction in general. So really interesting piece that I want to read here. Fasting showed a very strong effect in increasing serum cortisol, while very low calorie diet and low calorie diet did not show significant increases. Okay, so interesting. Fasting showed a very strong increase in cortisol, while those other dietary approaches that were lower calorie but not strictly pure fasting had less of or not a significant increase in serum cortisol. But let's continue. The meta-regression analysis showed a negative association between the serum cortisol level and the duration of caloric restriction, indicating serum cortisol is increased in the initial period of caloric restriction, but decreased to the baseline level after several weeks. So while cortisol levels increased in the initial period of the calorie restriction, the body ended up kind of resetting. And that wasn't something that was found with the pure fasting group. So just something to consider. Again, I am a proponent of fasting for a lot of people in a lot of situations. In several of my programs that I've created and ran with clients, intermittent fasting was a big part of it. And intermittent fasting does work if you do it the right way, but it has to be done the right way. And that's why I caution against these template programs, because it has to be personalized. And it's not, it's easier just to follow what somebody else exactly tells you what to do, and you're part of a program. But what you need to do is to work on your own, and you need to, or at least work with somebody who's actually doing that work for you and taking the time to dedicate that time to understand your unique needs before you just all willy-nilly follow a template protocol. And that's just always the right way to go. So very interesting, all of the different nuances that we're seeing in the new research with intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diets, and again, how they're right in a lot of situations and they have a lot of benefits, but they might not be right for everybody. So you guys let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. Leave a comment below, like the video, help get it into the YouTube algorithm, start spreading this information into more people, and definitely subscribe to the channel here. A lot more content coming out here in the next few months. We're going to be breaking down the newest research in the nutrition and longevity communities, just like we did today, pulling up studies, actually looking at what the research shows, not just talking, but actually looking at what the research shows and expanding on it, because the research is great, but we actually need to add some context to each and every one of these studies and not just run with what the headline shows. So thanks for everybody for tuning in today. You can see the social media handles there on the bottom of the screen: Instagram at Joe Condora, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. Give me a follow. If you have any questions, send me a DM. Always happy to help. All right, guys, take care. We'll talk soon. Peace.